It is now my great pleasure to introduce Cherie Blair. Cherie Blair has served in many ways throughout her career, known professionally as Cherie Booth in her role as a barrister, a Queen's Counsel, a part-time judge, and an accredited mediator, and known as Cherie Blair in her role as the wife as the former Prime Minister of the UK. Perhaps most interesting to me is her role in campaigning for equality and human rights. 2008 was a wonderful year for you. That is when Cherie Blair published her autobiography, Speaking for Myself, and also started her foundation, the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women. The foundation is committed to working with women in Africa, South Asia, and the Middle East, with programs in enterprise development, mentoring women in business, and mobile technology. Cherie was awarded a Commander of the Order of the British Empire, a CBE, in the 2013 New Year's Honours List for services for women's issues and to charity in the UK and overseas. Mrs. Blair, your foundation staff has been an absolute joy to work with. We are honored that the foundation is an official outreach partner of FI2020, and we've been so impressed by their lightning quick follow-up and their excellent ideas and all the support they've provided, so thank you. Now I have one little thing I've been looking forward to. I have a sign that was given to me years ago that I would like to show you. It says, and this is from the year 1871, by the gracious ordinance of the Honourable Lords of the Royal Courts of Justice, London, England, no loans to any women whatsoever. So, Mrs. Blair, I think we've come a long way. And you are an important part of ensuring that we've come a long way. Would you mind taking a photo with this sign? Welcome, Cherie Blair. Thank you.
I should say that not only was this in 1870, as you were saying, but as late as 1928, the Privy Council in London overturned a ruling which said, brought from Canada, which said that women could not stand for Parliament because they were not persons. And that had stood in the UK and was applied in Canada, and 5 amazing women said, we're not going to stand for that. And they took their case all the way through the Canadian courts, all the way to here in London. And at that point, one of the judges said, why shouldn't a woman be a person? And that's actually one of the things we're talking about today, isn't it? Why shouldn't a woman be someone who's a customer, who can get a loan? And why shouldn't a woman be someone who's a banker who can give a loan?
Thank you so much.
So it falls to me to open this morning's session, and I'm delighted for that and for that important introduction. I particularly liked the film. I'm a great fan of these little cartoons that say so much, and I think the one you showed us says so much. I'd love to put it on our foundation's website as well. I was here yesterday as well, and I know that there are so many people in this room who've been committed to the cause of financial inclusion for the poor for many, many years, but also know that now is the time which is ripe for us to take this idea and really make it happen, not just in little pockets, but to scale. I know, of course, that the poor aren't only women. They include the disabled, the elderly, young people, rural residents, migrants, many marginalized groups. But it's also true to say that poverty has a female face. Today, I want to invite you to join this global movement towards full financial inclusion, not just for the few, but for everyone. This roadmap that we're talking about is a vital part of combating poverty and promoting economic development. And our work not only starts now, but accelerates now. As it said in the little video, everybody needs financial services, whether informal or formal. Most people find a way of getting them. But very few people, even in middle, let alone low-income countries, enjoy the quality service from formal financial service providers that, frankly, you and I take for granted. In high-income countries, nearly 90% of people have basic bank accounts. Most middle-class people are supported at every turn by financial services. I know, I barely carry cash. It's all credit card purchases. I have mortgages on my home. I love to do internet banking and paying and buying goods over the internet. You know, I have insurances, I have pensions. These are just part of what I take for granted. But that is not the case for so many people across the world. And we hear it again and again, don't we, that more than 2.5 billion people lack access to those quality financial services that we take for granted. And let us not forget the people here in London, in the UK, across the developed world, who, because of their financial circumstances, because of their locality, don't get that access either, or they get it on much less favourable terms. Many barriers, according to the Centre for Financial Inclusion, cause this gap. Sometimes it's about the cost of delivering these services to the people at the base of the pyramid, particularly if they live in remote and inaccessible areas. In other cases, it's because, frankly, the products just don't meet the customer's needs. When the products are designed, nobody thinks about this kind of customer. Or the eligibility requirements get in the way. A simple example, for too long, many banks, before they would loan, would want land as collateral. Fine if like me, you own your home jointly with your husband and you have a paper to prove it. Not fine if you're in many countries in the world where it's still extraordinarily difficult for women to own land or inherit land at all. So what seems to be a non-sex-based criteria is in fact operating against women in particular. But today, we can change that dynamic. We're at a stage where, for the first time perhaps, we can really make a change. Why? Well, obviously, technology, because technology not only allows us to reach out to more people, it allows us to reduce the costs because of the increase in scale. Secondly, we now find that in areas such as Africa, we are seeing what was regarded as a basket case continent for an economy. It's now the place everyone wants to invest in. So we're seeing, therefore, an appetite to invest in Africa, turning people who were once disregarded into opportunities for business. And thirdly, the policymakers are making this a priority. In fact, the G20 has said it is a priority, and the 88 nations participating in the Alliance for Financial Inclusion are also making it a priority. And all sorts of innovative ideas are springing up across the world. We've got many practical examples that we've heard about already, and I know we'll hear about more today, that make us believe, actually, it is now possible to change things and that progress is already started. I mean, we don't need to know now that Kenya has become the sort of poster girl for this campaign. Everyone now knows about mobile money in Kenya. And it has brought services not just to Nairobi, which after all is a hub in East Africa, but even to the remote areas, like the shores of Lake Victoria, where I visited a lady called Liliana Adeambo. She was someone who we were supporting with Care International in a program that my foundation was doing there. She was a used clothing dealer, and she was one of 5,000 entrepreneurs who took part in a women's economic empowerment project that Care International and my foundation were conducting, with a little bit of help from Barclays Bank. She told me that before she'd been on this program, she, just like the lady in the video, had kept her money in a box under her bed. But that was not the safest place in the world. By going on the program, she was introduced to the idea of mobile money. That meant that when she took her takings at the end of the day, instead of having to walk to the bank to do that, she could just do it through her mobile phone. It also meant that her money was more secure than it was under her bed. And in fact, as a result of the training she had in business skills and that access to mobile money, she expanded her business, and by the end of the period, she had 3 units in different locations, so she'd increased and expanded her business. So, working with a woman entrepreneur who had a good business idea and just needed a little bit of help to make it grow really works. But for every 1 Lillian that there are thousands of others that we're still not reaching, and that's what we have to tackle now. At the moment, what we're seeing is great projects, but they are uneven, they're unstructured, and they're certainly not to scale. And it's exactly why we are here today. So we've got to think and act strategically if we want to expand access to financial services globally. Yes, financial inclusion is more and more a policy goal, but do we really yet have a coherent movement and a concise and practical roadmap to make it happen? Well, we may be on the verge of that, but we've got to give it that final push. And I hope that it's here at this forum that we will have a spark that will ignite this into a full-scale global movement. And of course, we have that roadmap already, the roadmap to financial inclusion. So what is it? Well, first of all, it's inclusive. It wasn't just written by one party. It was developed in consultation with a wide range of stakeholders. And these 5 sets of guidelines actually set out our 5 shared goals and the path that we must take to achieve them together. And of course, they are at the heart centred on the needs of the people we wish to serve. Because if they don't do that, they're not going to succeed. We have to understand that those at the base of the pyramid have real needs that need to be met, and also that the best people to know and identify those needs are those people themselves. They may be similar to the needs of our existing customers, but they're not always the same, and we have to take those differences into account. So we need to make sure that we build products that fit in with the needs and aspiration of low-income households, not try and make the low-income households fit into the products we've already got for a very different audience. In most of the world, women in particular struggle to obtain loans, to access suitable saving products, or even open a bank account. Financial institutions are often reluctant to give out loans to women, unless they can bring along a male partner or have high-value collateral. So yes, maybe richer women can get loans, but even then, they're probably not on the same favourable terms as the men. And when they do get loans, they also tend to be smaller. And yet, every time we read any report, the message comes over loud and clear. If we're going to defeat poverty, we need to include women. And if we do so, and we empower women, then we have fantastic results. Closing the access gap will result in better living standards, not just for the women themselves, but for their families and communities as well. We have to keep repeating this case, because even though report after report makes this case, we're still not seeing a response to that case, which shows that the people we're talking to are listening. The people in this audience can change that. And why should you do it? Because actually it makes commercial sense as well. Women are excellent customers. Microfinance surely has shown us that. This market and several others at the base of the pyramid are going to be captured now. The successful providers will be the ones who understand this market segment best and actually produce products that the people really need. The second roadmap topic is the power of technology-enabled financial services. I think some of you may have heard me speak before about how I am a techie. I could not have carried on being a QC and doing my practice when my husband was in Downing Street if it hadn't been for technology. A technology that enabled me, a fortunate woman, to be able to be working on my business at home and pausing and going down and having tea with the First Lady of Tanzania. And my customers, my clients, wouldn't even know that I'd been away for that 45 minutes. But you know, why is it only fortunate women like me that can have the flexibility that technology brings? The technology should be also available to the women entrepreneurs around the word who are struggling to make ends meet, struggling to combine their business with their family lives, and could make things so much easier for them if they had access to technology. Of course, the other benefit of technology is the way it brings down costs. And the more we reduce the costs, the more lower income participants can be involved. I was in Ghana a week ago, because there my foundation is working with USAID and Tigo Cash on a mobile money project there. And this goes to my other passion, because women aren't just customers. Women need to be part of this industry too. And yet again, we're seeing that women are not involved at the levels and at the numbers that they should be. So we teamed up to try and break that by encouraging and training women to be Tigo mobile money agents. What we did was we gave the women business training, technology training, access to a microfinance loan to start the business, and a contract from Tigo to actually make it happen. And I went for myself and visited several of the women we are helping and saw the services that they were doing. One of the times you mentioned in that video about how the lady wanted to save for her child's education. Whilst I was in one of our little mobile money stores, a woman came in and she was sending one Ghanaian, whatever it was, exactly, to her 14-year-old brother in the rural areas because he needed to buy pencils and paper for his schooling. She was able to do that as a customer because we'd provided a mobile money service for her to do that. How she would have done it otherwise, who knows? It works, doesn't it? Yeah. And now we're going to extend that to our newest program with Visa. With Visa, we are going to train over 2,500 women entrepreneurs and give them the opportunity to be agents in the retail network of a leading provider of branchless banking and mobile financial services. We know that most women entrepreneurs in Nigeria operate in the informal sector. We want to bring them into the formal sector, not just for their own benefit, but actually for the benefit of the wider community too, because then they can be counted and they can make a contribution through their taxes. We are going to develop this program over the next few months, so you'll be hearing more about it. But we are going to ensure that we make the point that actually women are not only consumers of these services, they deserve a place in the retail side of the business as well. But of course, if we're going to do this, and this is one of the problems in Nigeria, we also need government's help, because we need the right kind of regulation, the right kind of framework, so that these new technologies can flourish and come to scale, and people can have the confidence that there is the consumer protection that is required. But this quality control, this government control, also has to be flexible and proportionate and with tiered due diligence measures, because otherwise, if we just try and regulate mobile money like it was a traditional banking system, then we're never going to get the access to the poor, because it's those requirements of the traditional banking system which has meant that we don't have branches in every village, and we never will, because it's not financially viable. Finally, of course, and the roadmap points this out too, if you're really going to have financial inclusion, you need financial capability in your customers. If the consumers are not themselves financially capable, then they won't either grasp why they need these services or know how to use them to the best effect. And people just can't naturally learn about financial services. They need to be introduced to why they can help them. And so we need to do so much more to support financial literacy. And that's an issue in every country in the world, because it's not just about access to financial services, it's also about wise counsel as to how to use them. Otherwise, you get into the sort of payday lending scenarios, which at the moment have been the topic of much conversation in my country. So we have so much more we can do in relation to helping financial literacy. The providers can do that with their customers. Schools need to be involved so that school children have basic financial education at a time when they need it. And, of course, all in all, we need to ensure, once again, that women are included in this conversation. So, I know we're going to hear later on today about how we can do this, not just transforming information, but also motivating positive behaviour. And I know that Sendil Mulinegan yesterday, talked about this, and I'm sure that there are many good lessons to be learned from that. So, how can we help? Well, I'm pleased to say that my own government, the UK Department for International Development, together with GIZ, the German Society for International Cooperation, have published a helpful toolkit called Promoting Women's Financial Inclusion. So, that's a good thing. Take it home and read it. I'm sure you'll find it fascinating. The fourth roadmap topic, and don't worry, there's only one more, is that we ensure effective credit reporting systems are in place in every country. It doesn't sound very sexy, but it is essential. We need to ensure that new customers gain access to credit and that they're helped prevent getting over-indebted. And that requires political will. I think that this conference is showing
that you can do so much in partnership. And the partnership represented here today, of course, are the NGO sector. They are the private sector. But everyone in this room knows that we also need to make sure that we have government buy-in and government involvement in this if we are going to actually crack this problem in the end. Because at the end of the day, we have to have client protection. And who else is going to really make that happen but the government? Because it's through legislation and it's through regulation that that can happen. So, we're here at a crucial moment for the movement for financial inclusion. Policymakers are finally talking about this. Service providers are getting excited about the commercial opportunities that it is providing. And the third sector are understanding that if the great programs that they already have happening are really going to go to scale, they need the partnerships with the private sector, enhanced by government, that this conference represents. So, what we're talking about today is collective action. And I hope that this conversation will provide the momentum, the knowledge, and the new connections that will launch a quality financial service for everybody, whether you're at the top or the bottom of that pyramid. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cherie Blair. We were so excited that you were the person to launch our roadmap to financial inclusion. I can't think of anybody better to make the case. And I really appreciate how you touched on all 5 aspects of the roadmap: financial capability, credit reporting, client protection, technology, and addressing customer needs. So thank you for covering so much territory in one talk. I know that we have some tweeting that's been going on, and we thought it would be really fun if one of your grantees, Njadeka Harry, would read a couple of tweets that have come in with questions for you. So Njadeka.
Good morning, Mrs. Blair. On behalf of Youth for Technology Foundation, thank you for the generous support that your foundation, the Cherie Blair Foundation for Women, has provided to Youth for Technology for our work in Nigeria. This first question is from DAI. Mrs. Blair, how do we reach women who aren't able to make their own economic choices or who aren't capable or literate to do so? The second question is from Seema Desai, and it's from the Next Billion. A GSMA report revealed that 300 million women in developing countries are missing out on the mobile revolution. What needs to change in this segment?
Well, thank you for that, and we've very much enjoyed working with Youth for Technology in the Delta region of Nigeria, where we're providing business training, or you're providing the business training and the access to the use of technology for some great young women, and not so young women too. Let me talk about illiterate women first, because you might think, well, there's nothing we can do to reach them, but it's actually not true. And an example of that is some of the work that my foundation's been doing with SEVA, the Self-Employed Women's Association in India. And there we have been working in Gujarat with women. The Self-Employed Women's Association is actually an agricultural cooperative of women across a number of states in India. And they operate almost like a trade union. But they also have their own wholesale centers, and those wholesale centers also have a network of retail agents who go around selling the rice and the turmeric. I say that because I went to visit one of these wholesalers and I helped pack some rice and some turmeric. And these women can live in the remotest of areas in Gujarat, and many of them are illiterate. But I tell you what, they are numerate. Otherwise, how would they be able to do their business of buying and selling? And what we did with the help of Vodafone Foundation was to give them a mobile phone and introduce into that their ordering system that they used to do on paper and have to travel sometimes up to a day to the wholesaler to get the goods. It's all now done by placing your order by text message on a mobile phone. And those women who were involved in constructing and designing the software told me when I saw them that their income had increased 200 and 300% because they didn't any longer have to take the long journey there and back, because now they could order by phone, get it delivered for a small cost, but because their turnover had increased, they were still making more money. And what was the effect of that? I asked one woman, and she said to me, well, I'm a widow, I have 2 children, and before I was using the mobile phone, I had enough to feed my children and myself once a day. Now, because my income is increased by 300%, I can feed us all twice a day, and I can send my 2 children to school. So that's what I call financial inclusion, even for those who are not literate. Obviously, we can do a lot more when people are literate. And the other thing that we've discovered is that for so many women nowadays, and we know that the development goal of primary school education is about one of the few that is being achieved. We also know the quality of that education isn't always very good. But what has happened often is that women who've had some basic primary education then go back to the villages where they have no use for literacy. But if they get a mobile phone and access often to some fantastic programs, and we know about those programs because they may be health tips, they may be business tips, then they've got an incentive to carry on using that basic literacy. So actually the mobile phone can be a way of preserving and even improving people's literacy skills as well. The other question was about, and you mentioned the GSMA report and the 300 million women, which resulted in us calculating there was a $13 billion lost opportunity for the mobile phone business, because that GSMA report was done in conjunction with my foundation. It was one of the first projects we actually wanted to do, because I was very interested, because I go to Davos and I go to the CGI and I go to other forums, and we all talk about access to the poor, but we weren't talking enough about women as part of the poor and women's particular needs. So yes, this is a great business opportunity for customers, but as I said in my speech, women need to have a share of this industry too, at all levels, not just as the mobile money agents that I've talked about in my speech, but also actually right through to the very top of this industry. Because as we all know, when you have a balanced board, a balanced workforce, and balanced services for customers, then you have a successful business. And my foundation did another report. This time we looked at the Middle East, seeing whether there were opportunities for women in the mobile phone industry. And we discovered that actually everyone agreed that the women were the better salespeople, even though they weren't by any means the majority of the sales force. And in the Middle East, it wasn't just that women were able to reach other women that men couldn't reach. It was actually also that many of the men trusted them more as good salespeople, and therefore that they did very good business. On the other hand, there was a wonderful story which I really love, which was several of the women told us that they didn't like buying airtime from males, because they would go along and the male would say to them, but I only sold you one last week, what have you been doing? What have you been doing with your phone? And starting to, rather than encouraging them to buy more of their employers' goods, was trying to find out what these women were doing. So the women would go and try and find somewhere else to buy from. Whereas they went to see women, the women would say, that's fantastic, and have you tried this service? Now, whether that's, again, I'm sure it is to do with cultural beliefs that the men in the Middle East think they can boss the women around, but let me tell you, it's not the greatest thing to have in your sales force. So more women in the retail chain, more women as customers, we could really change the world.